Hello, welcome to the last day of class, actually the last recorded session of the class. The last day will actually be this Saturday when all work is due Saturday at midnight. Technically 11:59 MST is when the last work is accepted, so make sure you get that finished by that timeline. I know that can be a challenge sometimes, but really try to make it happen. So keep that in mind. 11:59 this Saturday night will be the last day. But today we're going to go over the final assessment. So that I'll actually be putting together a version of it of my own, and it'll be an expedited version because usually we don't have time to go over that whole thing and create logos and everything else. And I don't mind if you get logos from some other source. That's fine. This isn't a logo design course. Now, technically, I mean, if you want to create logos, I think that's great. I'd encourage it. But if you do want to take pre-existing logos and just use them for part of the layout, I'm okay with that. Anyhow, today I wanted to talk about Connie had sent her project in, her final project, so we can go over that. And then I'll go over the kind of my version of the final assessment. So really just two things today. I didn't even care to do a itemized breakdown, an outline of what we were doing today, because it's really just the final assessment, and that's it. So we're just going to work on that. But let me go ahead and open a version of what Connie had sent. Just open the PDF for now. Let's open the, see, so when that happens, let's say how it's asking me could not find the link. It's Illustrator's looking for that PNG, which is this file here. See that with the booth? That's what it's telling me it's missing. So if something to keep in mind, you have to actually send that file separately if you want to send it to somebody else's machine, like let's say it's getting printed or it's looking for it right now. So that's, I mean, a PDF you can get away with because a PDF encapsulates everything. But if you want to send, for example, let's take a look at it at full size. Let's look at it in Illustrator. And it's saying replace. I don't want to replace, I'm just going to ignore it. There's another one that wants to ignore that, ignore this. So, there's nothing here at all. I'm even surprised that this linked image showed up. Oh, you can't see the screen? Okay, let's try to fix that then. I thought this was sharing. Can you see it now? Okay, great. All right, so here, I'll just show you. So if you're going to include I can see, Connie, that you have these files, for example, and you have a AI file. Adobe Illustrator is what .ai means here at the extension. So if I double click on this, watch what happens. It's trying to find all of those links because it's kind of like what InDesign does and why you have to package InDesign files so that it's all linked in one folder. So when you open that file on someone else's computer, Illustrator or InDesign or whatever it is you're using to package is going to find all of those external assets, they call them. So any kind of image file, like a JPEG, PNG, whatever, GIF image, it will link to it. No, that's all right. We'll just end up having to look at it though from the PDF. So just something to know in the future, that when you're using these vector programs, anything that you link out to, you need to include that external file, because otherwise you'll just get this kind of warning, and when we open it, this is all we're going to see is whatever is actually either embedded within here or a file path that you included within the folder. So just keep that in mind. That's just, we're just going to have you submit the PDF for this and the JPEG separately, or you can include them all. But, keep in mind that you won't be submitting the AI, so it's not really too much. It's not really going to affect anyone in here for this project so much. I mean, it's something to keep in mind though. So anytime if you want your projects to show up as you intended them, that's my project. I'm going to show that in just a minute, but so here we can't really see kind of your artwork that was here. So did you do these in Photoshop? Is that kind of your original, how you did the originals, Connie? See if I can open them here. We can see a version of them here. Did you do these in Photoshop? The book covers, it looks like. Okay. Yeah, I think the layout's pretty good. Overall, it's really good. But just make sure that it's your designs, and that somebody else didn't do that and you just didn't take a screenshot and lay text over it. We want you to do the workings with the character and the background and all that stuff. So, this, if it was already like that and you just, took a screenshot or whatever, that's not what we're after. We need you to actually do the design work. And all of it, not just laying text over the images, but put together the whole thing. I don't mind if you use a logo, but you'll have to include a logo in this as well. Comic-Con, that's fine. You can use that for this. But make sure that these are your own. It's all your own design work. It's all your own layout. All of that has been kind of worked through on your own. You came up with your own scheme for it. But I think here, I think you've got the right idea, and that these panels fit well. And they're both different. You got the red, the green. I think that's a nice contrast in color with these two. One thing that you are missing is the actual pieces. So you'd lose quite a bit on this project if all you did was hand in just this, because we need to see this kind of brought into its own artboard, so it would be more actual size and something like so. So we'd have this just add a couple more artboards. So this is how you present it. And I'm more concerned with the aspect ratio than the size. I don't even care about the size so much as the aspect ratio, the width to height, so that it fits on that panel when you put it in there. So you need to make sure it's a decent looking resolution. This looks a little bit pixelated, as you can see. We wouldn't want that. I said yesterday you could work at 100 dpi if you want. So this would be, for example, how you want to present this. Someone's mic is on. Do an audio check, please. There we go. So here you've got to put this on these panels. But really, if you didn't do the layout, if you didn't, if all you did was put text on here, that's not really going to work. I can't give you much credit. It would actually fail, Connie. If you turn this project in, it would fail because this is not enough of your own student work in the layout. I need to see a lot more than just a screenshot of someone else's layout and someone else's photography. So just, make sure that that happens. So, this is how you would present this, for example. So it's like these are the two panels that would go to the printer. This would be kind of in context what it looks like. Might make it a little larger and fills the space a little bit more, or shrink down the artboard or whatever you want to do. But that's kind of how you'd want to turn it in. I don't know that you have to worry about putting a separate one of the logo. I mean, you could, but really I want to see those two panels separate, and I'm looking mostly at the width to height, and that you have that right for when you actually put it on the 3D mock-up panel. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. So we went from this, and let me, so this was the first version. It was just on this download here, the trade show booth. So you can download that, and you get these two images. Choose one or the other, and then you'll create two documents that basically are the same aspect ratio as these two. And then this one is optional. If you want to put something on this, fine. If you want to leave it blank, that's also fine. But make it look like a complete scene. I think whether or not this is here doesn't really matter. We kind of know what's going on for the most part. It doesn't even necessarily have to be Comic-Con that this would appear at. It could be any kind of book trade show or anything else. So I suppose, here you've got the requirement that you need. You don't need anything else. So this would be good if it was her work, 100% her work, all the typography and all the layout was done by her. This would get an A. So that is, that's how you'd want to turn this in. If you just had it like before and you just had it just like this here, that wouldn't do as well because it definitely wouldn't receive an A because you're just turning in that one panel. So we need to see some separate panels that you size on your own. And like I say, I don't really care so much about size. You can make them, looks like about a 1:2 ratio on this, about that, not quite. Might be about a 1 to 1.7 or something like that ratio. So one way I could show you to go about getting that and to get the right aspect ratio, for example, might, well, we could do it with this one. Why don't we try it with this one first? So I need to bring this into my project anyways. So we can place this. And really, if I just take a rectangle tool and just trace over it like that, just line it up carefully. I can blow it up a little bit so I have a little more control. And what I do from here is just use that. So what's the size of this? I can easily get that by going to the transform panel. And it's telling me it's 6.31 by 10.666. So I might like round this up, go 11. Well, let's make sure that before I do that, that this is linked. So constrain width and height proportions. So that means now I'll change this to 11 to make it simple. And this, it goes to 6.5. So if we go 11.6.11 and 6.5, I'm going to actually take that off. And now I'm going to link them. So now I can get the aspect ratio easier if I bring this back down to like 10. So it's almost a 1:2 ratio, but not quite. It's about a 1 to 1.9 ratio. But with this already, with the fact that I already have this already sized and it fits on here, and I changed it a little bit to make it easier, but do I want this little border on here? Maybe, maybe not. I can just bring that back up to size. Now it fits in there pretty well, but let's make it a little bit larger, so we want to look at it on a bigger scale. As long as you've got that shift key held down, constraining those proportions, you're keeping them the same. You can make it really any size and maybe make it a little bit bigger so we can see that these are panels here. And if you want to make it something even, like maybe like let's say 20 inches, that's just an easier number to keep track of. So 20 by 11.8. Then that could be our size. And then I just take a new artboard, bring it over here. Oops, delete that off of there. With this artboard tool at the bottom of the tools panel, I can just either drag it to resize it like so, or go a little bit more. The easier route, I think, is go to the transform tool. Actually, you don't need the transform tool. It should be up here, but my zoom controls are covering that top panel right now. So let me drag this down. So there's a width to height panel up here that every time I go try and access it, the zoom controls drop down, so I can't really show it or work with it. But you can actually, the way that I work with that transform panel, just put the sizes in there. That's probably the easier way to do this, but in my case, I could also just do it manually. As long as I have snapping turned on, it'll snap right into that size right there. So now that I have this size, I just hold down Option, drag out another one here. Now I've got all of my panels that I'm going to want. Let's say I want this panel in the middle. If you want to include that optional middle panel, just the same way, you just take this. I mean, you could do a strip like that if you wanted. You can kind of do whatever you'd like as far as how you want to kind of work with this. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's like this. It could be diagonal. It could fit this whole thing just right. You know, figure out how you want to place it. Let's say I like this. And then just drag this over. Increase it by about the size that you did this. It doesn't really have to be exact. Percentage-wise, you could do it exact if you wanted. But here I'll just take this artboard tool again. We'll just drag this over. It takes with it any artwork that's on top of it. So here I would probably, the easier way, select this and take, now that could be easy too. So it just clicked on it and it automatically created an artboard. So that's another easy way to go. So this is this would be my panel in the center, and these would be my two panels here, which remember you want to make those different. So you would have gotten credit for making those different on each side, but really it wouldn't have scored too high. Make sure you're just putting your own composition together, using your own everything, not just typography, but all of those background compositions and everything like that. Because that's what you want to do really if you're going to learn graphic design. And I'd even encourage you to make your own logos, but like I said, you could also, that would be the only part that you could really create or take from someone else's pre-existing graphic design work. So, avoid anything that's already laid out and put together. That's the sort of stuff that you guys want to do as students. So here's my project that I put together. As you see, I've got these two panels. I don't really need these anymore. I'm just going to get rid of these. Just showing you how to make artboards. For those that didn't know already, I'm just selecting and deleting. It's not the only way to make artboards. You can also use the artboard panel, but this seems to be a pretty good tool to make them fast and customize them fast. So it's kind of a fun tool, this one at the bottom here. So delete that. So you can see my three panels. I've got each one is different. This one and this one. And this one, they're all different. So doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to put the exact same panel on all of these. I mean, I guess you can, if you decide that you want to put the same panel, maybe something you could do is flip it and then, make sure your text, you got to take all the text off and redo your text. But something different on each side, or maybe If you want to do the exact same thing on each of these panels here, do something different for this one. So, that's what I'm looking for, at least 2 panels that are different. Feel free to do more than that. Feel free to do all 3 panels if you'd like, all different, or just do the 2. But I'm looking for at least 2 different panels, 2 different layouts. I'm looking for use of a logo, evidence of following the same brand. So you can see this company that I just made up called Rising Star Music System for music training. They're boasting. I just made this up, but learn to play any instrument in less than 1 month. So that's kind of the deal here. I'm thinking, when I look at this, I think it's pretty good. We just got a couple of different instruments, and these will go into this area. But what I want to do before I start putting them in here is actually making this so that it's finalized for the most part. And now it's like I'm looking at it, there's a few things that I could improve on. Maybe the main thing I'm looking at is the text and the star. Maybe we could do something here. The rest of it's, I'm pretty happy with the rest of it. So we'll put those panels in here, but let me do some touching up and make it look just a little bit better before I start putting these in this area here. So learn to play any instrument in less than 1 month. So this just looks like the centering is off, or something's just not quite to my liking in here. So I'm going to work with this a little bit. And let's see, let's make sure for one, looks like it's centered properly. We could write out the word 1. Work with some colors on this. And already it's helping. I guess I'm not ultra wild about the font. It's okay. I used it up here. Let's see if we got this font up here. I forget what it's called. Bebas Noye. Let's try that one out. A little bit more long and thin. It's kind of got some a little bit more unique character to it. Myriad Pro is a nice font, but maybe a little bit wrong for this. I'm liking it a little bit more. Learn to play any instrument in less than 1 month. I'm not wild about pairing 2 sans serif fonts. So let's see what this whole thing looks like if we go all Bebas. Oh, yeah. Might also look a little better. Take this out, put it over here. Wondering, normally you don't want to tilt text too much, but if there's just a little bit, sometimes that can kind of do it, and I think that does help it quite a bit more. I wonder too if we did something more interesting with the 1 month. Let's go, kept this on one line. 1 an abbreviated month. Maybe for sake of going faster, I'll just go superscript that instead of the period there, which kind of bothers me. I'm gonna maybe do like an underline or something. Let's see what that looks like. I don't use underline very much, but here's another way. I could maybe abbreviate it like this. Less than, well, I don't know. People probably might get confused on that one. Less than. You can, I'm trying to abbreviate it so it looks a little bit more readable. And so far I kind of like that. But a lot of times you just have to try things out before you settle for something. So that one's okay. Let's see if we got any mileage with this. Here it's straight on. I kind of like the tilted effect here. Now that it's smaller, we've got more room to work within here. So that's looking a little bit better, I think. Anyway, so I like that. Maybe we can do something here with this one. Ungroup it. Use this. Because this is all inside that star, I want to kind of maintain that same text treatment. So I don't want to go too much smaller. It's going to be too small. But some things that I could do is maybe make the star a little bit bigger on this one. Limits to what I can do that still stays within the style. I think we can get away with that, no problem. So this star doesn't really tilt, just stays kind of upright straight across. That's fine. Or just kind of this burst. Oops. All right, so anything else maybe we could do? Any other ideas? I was thinking maybe a drop shadow on the star. Subtle one. Get this grade in here and then multiply. Brings it out a little bit more, add some more depth. We could do that with the piano keys here. Send these backwards. You know what? I'm just going to grab my pen tool, kind of make my own shadow there. That'll add some depth. I think will help it. Make sure I'm selecting this right. All right, let's go multiply. That looks kind of cool. Actually, I meant for that to go all the way behind, but I don't really mind that little bit of depth there. The other thing I can do if it's like I'm hitting the back key because I'm going arrange to back, so select, like object, arrange, send backward. That's what I was just doing. I was using that shortcut key with the square bracket. So command or control on a PC, square bracket. I was just doing that repeatedly, and I did it probably at least a dozen times. And it still hasn't gone back far enough. You can see it went back maybe behind this layer. What I like to do then is just cut it, select that item so to target what I'm going behind. So in this case, I want to select that piano, the piano keys. So even if I hold down Option with the direct selection tool, you get that little plus sign by whatever you click on, whatever that anchor point is, it'll select all the anchor points in that object. So we just got this selected, and then I can just go Command or Control B. And as you can see, it pastes right behind that object, whatever we had selected. So that's kind of a handy technique. All right, so now we're getting a little bit more depth in this. I kind of like it. Of course, since we've done it on the one, let's make it overlap this M a little bit. So the M goes across our shadow, so we got some overlapping. Again, it just adds some more depth to it. You know, things like this, that's kind of an issue here. We could either go here like this and just line it up with this, or just make it more obvious. Kind of like it. I think it looks a little better if it's more obvious. But you know, sometimes you might want to take that method and line it up. Maybe, you know, maybe that method does look better, because I don't know that I like the 2 points. They're really strong right there. And sometimes you just have to make that judgment call. Do those 2 points kind of call too much attention to itself? I think, do we have any reason for people to look right here? I don't really think so. So I'm going to pull this out like so. I think I'm going to go with that one, with that solution. But, you know, again, as we went over with the family tree and really all of the class, make sure that you do pay attention to the whole concept of craftsmanship. Just gonna see how this looks in some other colors. Can't even see it there. This, choose it. I like that a little bit better. I might want to bold this, either 1 month or do something here. Not extremely bold, but stands out a little bit more. If I did it on that one, we got to make sure the brand is consistent. We got to do it over on this one. All right, so I think it's coming along well so far. I'm not super wild again about using 2 sans serif fonts because they're so similar. So, I mean, this doesn't look terrible. The forms are different enough. This Bebas is long and narrow, or tall and narrow, whereas this text down here is, well, the Myriad Pro is a lot wider, a lot more round. The O's you can see. So it works okay together, but maybe it would work a little bit better if I just use like a serif font in here. And maybe it's something kind of classic like Bodoni, or try Bodoni, old style. was going to try Garamond maybe. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's got it. So it just looks a little bit different than having two of the exact same style of fonts. It's usually something that you don't want. Again, not to say you can't ever get around that rule, but something to watch out for. I'm going to try Bodoni Poster. It's kind of got the right feel to it. Kind of. Looks a little. So it's actually, for me, it's, in my opinion, it's calling a little bit too much attention to itself. So I'm going to try a different typeface. Maybe, you know, those extreme contrasts in a thick and thin. It's really kind of, I really like Bodoni, but it might just be a little bit too strong with those extreme contrasts. And let's try maybe something I believe Garamond might work for us. Let's see how that looks. I want caption, maybe semi-bold would work. Garamond has a really low, small X height, so if I'm going to use Garamond, I probably want to go a little larger than what I was before. About 72 maybe. And that's a little bit better. I think I'm liking that a little more. I'm going to add some distance from the top. So I think it looks better now than this up here. In fact, I'm just going to borrow this whole thing and move it up here. Kind of align it with this. It doesn't fit extremely well here. Oh, you know, I think I want to keep it from overlapping that star in this case. I kind of want that star to come forward. Feel like it's an element that's farther forward. So anyhow, and these all line up. This has a slightly different text treatment at the top on both posters, which is okay. Well, I guess they're not posters, they're more panels, but use the line tool, and just kind of align those at the top. Again, so that leading here could probably come up a little bit tighter. Oops. I want that. Let's try 70. Whoops. 7. $62, $72. That Garamond has a really tall X or small X height, so the ascender line is quite a bit higher than a lot of fonts. All right, well, looks about the same in terms of leading here. All right, a few of these little I don't know that we need this up here. Get rid of that. And because we did that, we can move this up more. that. All right. So doing kind of the same thing with the drop shadows and making it look. We just copy and B, and then we'll move this over. Kind of use this, do that same drop shadow effect. I for eyedropper, and we'll pick up that style here. And I'll just play around with this till it looks right, till I'm happy with it. Comment, sorry, I didn't even see that till recently. So on the panel with autumn orange, Brianne says, on the panel with autumn orange, could you move the zone portion over so it is not cut off the page since you have the empty space? Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good point down here. Yeah, we can do that. We got this little infographic thing here. Really, it's kind of a background element, but you group all of that. We could maybe move it up. I don't mind if it's overlapping it. It's kind of a background graphic that maybe we have used in our brochures, or maybe it's something that's people recognize if they've been familiar with our products or something like that. So it's kind of meant to be cut off as a background element, not necessarily be seen. Same with this one. That was how I was thinking of that. And really, I mean, those, are they really adding to it? If they're not adding to it a whole lot, then maybe consider not even using them. I almost like that better. So we've kind of simplified it a little bit. Simplification is almost always a good thing. This, I don't want visual noise. That it's kind of hard to manage, so I'm just making a shadow so we don't get too much visual noise up here. All right, so just looking at little kind of nitpicky things at this point. For the guitar, maybe we could have another thing like this. And have another drop shadow. So we have something like that. Got to make sure that maybe this will work. Use the same shadow setting with the multiply, why not? It doesn't, which is, I guess it wouldn't really look like that in shadow, but really, well, mostly after conveying that mood, that feeling, rather than what it would actually look like. Really, this would just be, unless you were seeing the wood clear down below it, it looked like a soft shadow, softer edge shadow. So I don't know if it kind of gets across what we're looking for, how we did the drop shadow on this, for example. Maybe we do want those hard edges, and I think that looks good, but my strings are kind of weird now because they have to go over that little piece. So I'd have to work with that quite a bit. If I saw that and I really liked it, I'd have to work with it to try to make this work. And it would take, for me in the demo, probably about 10 minutes to get something that worked if I really like this, but I'm not sure that I really like it. It's not like a real discovery here. And maybe that's because this is a recessed thing. What if we put this up here? I kind of like that. That looks pretty good. Let me make sure that this is lined up to my other piece. Since these strings are on multiply, they're kind of looking a little weird. Or no, they're on overlay. Let's see what they look like on multiply. I mean, I guess I could maybe live with something like that. Let's see. Instead of overlay, multiply. Well, I kind of like the yellow color. That's just a little too dull. Let's see actually what it looks like with something like this. There's my yellow that I was using. I think it was this. Now it's looking really busy, but what I was going for is the I want that yellow. Not quite right. Let's go crazy neon yellow. I think there's a setting on here. These are all still on multiply, that's why. So down below in my group is where these were set on multiply. Huh, they're still set on multiply. Normal. So I'm gonna have to change them one by one. Let's see if I can change multiple at once. There we go. I don't know why it wouldn't let me do that before. All right, so now it's a little bit too loud. But if we just bring these down a little bit, how would that look? Like those brighter yellow lines are adding to the design, I think. So just kind of tone that down a little bit, control our stacking order a little bit more. Go back in time. And I'll just cut this, Command Shift V to paste in place. And just actually, hit it one time. So this was kind of strange with, these shouldn't be showing shadows in the shadow area. So maybe if we brought those up, brought this one up. So here we're gonna have to cut it. C for scissors tool, and cut this here and just delete that center part. One more of those we gotta do. C for scissors, or C for cut, cut here. Right on that line there. And just delete that. So no drop shadow in this center area here. I know this is probably shouldn't have a drop shadow like that, but I kind of like that just graphic effect. It's not a realistic looking thing, but it does. I do kind of like that. And even if we kind of brought this down so that it got larger as it came in, I'd like to see that. I want to keep it round. So it really kind of added some depth in here. Sure, it's not realistic, but who cares? You know, it looks, I think it looks a little better. It kind of brings our eye into this area here where it says, learn to play any instrument in less than 1 month, which is ideally part of the, you know, the campaign slogan, or kind of one of those major taglines that we use, or would be using in this case. All right, so now I've got both of these polished up pretty well to the point that I think I'm liking what I have. Looking at things like, well, I don't really want this. I'll make sure my stacking order is good. And perhaps, you know, I want to fix little things like this. So here, I'm just going to arrange that. So I'm using stacking order. Maybe what I would like to do is change all of this, change my logo here. Just a thought. Unfortunately, it's all ungrouped, so I've got to select each and every little piece. Now that I've got it all selected, I'm going to group it Command or Control G, and I'll just take this color, see what that looks like. It's all right. How about this color here? How about this darker black? Well, I don't want it to be, it kind of looks neat, but I could put a shadow on that logo, and that might be interesting. If you've created the logo, you can do what you want. That's another good thing about this. But you know, if you do choose a logo, respect their brand and just follow that brand guideline. Don't change it too much, or don't change their logo at all. So if you wanted to do Walmart, for example, that's fine. If you wanted to use Walmart's logo from week 2, that's fine. You can use that, but you know, don't change that. Keep that exactly how it is. Don't even add drop shadows or glows or anything like that, because in real life you wouldn't. And it's usually in their specification that you don't change any of that stuff. So anyhow, I was going to try another color here, maybe the brown. Let's see what the brown looks like. There we go. It's pretty, I like that because it's nice and bright. And if we're looking at it from far, far away, it looks pretty good. This is kind of plain and empty down here at the bottom, I think. So we'll really shift some things around. Even if we brought this down a little bit to fill this space, how would that be? I think you can only push those stars so far before they kind of look weird. They look like they're being distorted. So that's not bad. I kind of like that. Oh, the green from the other star. That's a good idea. Let me try that out. So Brienne was mentioning, what about the green from the other star? And that's a good idea because that's another color being another tie into that. So that looks, yeah, I could maybe do that. Have to try that on for size. Oh, for the, yeah. Okay, so shoot, you're talking about the logo, okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to see it. So the only thing here is just that, how well it shows. So if we're looking at it from far like that, across the room, it's like, oh, I can recognize that logo. There's enough contrast here that we see it. Whereas that logo with that shade of green wouldn't really read from very far away. It's kind of like you're squinting to try to see what that says, you know. So here we'll change it back. Now it reads. Now we know that logo. This feels a little bit close on this when I'm looking back, and that's another thing you can do. You can always kind of zoom out, zoom in, and look at the placement of your elements. Do they seem like they're a little bit, do they seem well placed? Do you need, maybe we could do something like that. I kind of like that better. And this maybe fits this space a little more in this case. I kind of like it when things overlap as well, but again, the sizes are the same on that, so maybe things that we could do that make these two line up. Here I'm thinking, we put this kind of bottom center, kind of works. Bottom center here. I'm just looking at things that I could use in terms of like, does that work? Yeah, kind of. What else can I do? Like I said before, I like that star on top because it would make it seem like it's floating above everything else. Not that I mind that overlapping too much, but I'm trying to avoid it. And I think it's good. I think you're thinking good on this because if we're trying to figure out how it might tie in, using those colors, those same colors makes a lot of sense. Let's see if we use the green here. It's a little, those values are a challenge, I think, is what I keep running into. And with this whole style, what I have going here, they're all flat and hard edges and not really using gradients so much. I kind of want to stick with that just so it maintains that style. And here, although this is kind of in alignment with this, I like it better if it's just adding some depth to here. The instrument seems like it's in the background. That's what that overlapping does. So even that little tad bit of overlapping makes it seem like you've got some layering going on. Like this is now in the background, this is in the back. This star is floating above it. Again, so is this text here, and this is back. And it's the same here with the instrument is in the back. And this would be floating above it. This would be floating above it. So there's some layering, but it's all flat. And that's the style of this piece. It's all kind of been flattened. So I just feel like I could do that, but it sort of breaks out of the style I've been wanting to maintain. So I may not want to do that. I'll use this guide to line things up. Keep that margin there. A little bit. Now we've got, I think, a pretty decent use of space on both of these. Maybe this could come up a little bit, group it. Up and over. Of course, I've got to make sure I remember to drag those strings up. well, so now I think I've got this for the most part, like how I'd want it. I mean, I'm happy with it pretty much. I could work with it a little bit more, try some other things out that I just made larger. So we just, any kind of change that you do here does differentiate it between this one. And, if we're looking for ways to tie it in, does that, sometimes it helps us, sometimes it doesn't. So here maybe I had purple on this background, maybe to tie it in, maybe we can try the green on that. Kind of like that now. So anyways, I'll call that good how it is. And in real life, I think I would play around with that a bit more, try some other things, but I'm happy with it for the most part. So here, really it's kind of break time too, but maybe I'll just start on this. So I've already sized it, so this part should be really easy. And we'll have to mask it. I can group that whole thing, Command G. Sometimes you'll run into problems with scaling strokes and effects. That's kind of a common one, actually. So if you do run into that issue and you've got your strokes and effects just going all haywire and they're not really working the way that you want them to, sometimes you want to preserve all that when you shrink it down or enlarge it from here. Sometimes you want all of that stroke and effect preserved. Other times you don't. So if it completely changes in your shape and form when you shrink it down like this and you're not happy with it, go into Preferences. So Illustrator, main file, Preferences. I'm just going to go into the General. I believe it's in General. Scale, Strokes, and Effects. There it is. So here I have it off, and that's typically what I work with. I have it off, but sometimes you do want it. So it's just this check box here at the end you'd want to have, and that will preserve everything that you have. Like, for example, actually, these are too thick. That's exactly the problem here. So with this, let's take a look at this. So it didn't scale my strokes, and I don't really have any effects in here, but the same thing would happen. Any kind of effects would be ruined if I took it and resized it. So let's do this differently. You can see the difference. Guitar strings aren't that thick. Guitar strings look like this. Or to sell my illusion of, on this illustration, that's what I want them to look like thinner. In real life, they'd actually be thicker on the top 3 strings than on the lower, or they'd gradually get thinner as they went down, but I didn't go for that detail. It's, this is just a simplification in the illustration. So, but let's say I want to keep that preserved how I had it. So I'll take this option, we'll move it over here. We're going to see the difference here in a second. I'll go in and we'll set up Preferences. Once again, General. Check this last one here, Scale, Strokes, and Effects. Click OK. Shift. And now we look at the guitar strings compared to these. So that's kind of a common problem people run into, is that right there. If your artwork is getting ruined, which it was hard for me to see until I really looked at it, I was like, wait, something's wrong here, and this is too thick for me, too thick. It doesn't really sell it the way that I wanted to. It doesn't really hold up that original illusion I was going for. So I went back, had to change strokes and effects to look a little bit better. I kind of like the way that these around here look. And if, maybe you like something that maybe you discover something by mistake, that happens quite often as well. So we can bump that up to maybe 3 points. How about 2 points instead of the 0.8? And you get a little bit more of that kind of effect going around it. Maybe that's a bit much. How about 1.5? So that's the one I'm going to use. That's the one without scaled strokes and effects, and you can see that it just didn't preserve what I was originally going for. But sometimes you can find some mistakes in there that work in your favor. So, all right, let's maybe center this. It's 3:15, so I'm going to do this one thing, and then we'll align the artboard. So I'm going to go center, center, and why don't I just lock that in 2, or I could put it on a different layer. But I think locking it will work because it's fairly simple in our case. But let's do a 10-minute break, come back, we'll finish this up. I'll put these in here, we'll export it, and basically finish this up and be done with class. So really it should go pretty fast, but let's do 10 minutes. So 3:25, we'll meet back here, and we'll see you then. I'm in a class right now. I haven't checked it today, but I'll see. So far, I haven't seen anything. Hey, it's 112.50. Not to be confusing with your fucking shit, man. Get down. Down. All right, we are back. I'll continue with this. Move this, taking this, putting it on the panel. So as you can tell, we don't want the pieces here sticking out off the edge. We want to cut that off. We can do that with a mask, either a clipping mask or a transparency mask. We can maybe try both of those out. Okay, let's make sure we can see the screen. Thank you for warning me there. There we go. Now we can see the screen, hopefully. Looks like it's sharing. Good. Okay, good. All right, so let's do probably each one. Let's try just the two ways that I could think of. I mean, you could also just trim your artwork so that it fits in a rectangle, but that's no fun, especially if you maybe you want to change things, and continue the star, move the star around. So what I would do in this situation is create a rectangle, which is going to be our mask. It's going to just mask off these edges. So I'll just take this, maybe zoom in a little bit so you can get a better handle on this. And then just take my rectangle tool, draw this out to the right size. Actually, white is right. White's the one I want to use, don't want to have stroke on it. I'll do this, just place it over where this is. I can fine tune it a little bit too. In fact, this is kind of needs to go over. Let me position this on the panel first. I think that'll be easier. Make that a little bigger. So it's just a little bit bigger than the panel than I actually need, at least my background is. Using that shift key to keep the proportions constrained. There's a little bit of bleed on this. I initially created it. Just keep that stuff in mind when we do this. It's a little bit larger than the panel, and now I'll bring this over it. Make sure that's on top. Actually, what I could do is take this back thing and then Command X, so I cut it and it doesn't get in our way, and I can position this just perfectly on it as well. So just kind of nudge that around so that it fits just there. You can even see that little ridge line on the edge, so I like that. Now I'll put Command V for paste in back. With those two selected, I can go into the transparency panel and hit this one here, which is Make Mask. And that will just chop it right on here. So it's even got, you see it cut off the star, but it's also got you can see that panel edge around the border. So I'm just going to nudge that a little bit more and play with it so it looks like it's kind of on like maybe the panel has a really minimal frame or something. And I can just fine tune this how I want it. I think maybe we can release it again. I think that bottom can come up a little bit. So let me just nudge these up a tad. Just going to use my arrow keys and bring them up just a little bit. Again, select the whole thing and then Make Mask. Now we've got little bits of ridges on the edges and it just looks a little bit better, I think. Actually looks like that's really a panel. Let's see, maybe we could even do something with transparency where you multiply. That kind of makes it so that there's shadows on it. It doesn't necessarily represent this color, but for this setting, it's going to pick up that shadow in the back if I do multiply. Some of these others you might try. Darken doesn't really do much. Lighten doesn't do anything. Overlay. I think multiply is probably going to be the best. The best one in most cases. So on this one, let's do same thing. Select this. Bring this over, Option drag. Drag that down. I probably should have had, I'm going to actually group this, Command G. Ideally, why don't I just take this and release it. I'm just going to borrow this mask because why, create it twice? I already created it once. So we'll just go back to that, make it, and just position it just right on there. And make sure that it looks just right. So you've got that little border around the edge. So I like that. What I'm going to do here is just go Command 3, and that just gets rid of it as far as our ability to see it. It's still there. All I have to do is do Command Shift 3. No, it's Command Option 3. Command Option 3 will bring it back. So Command, select it, Command 3, it just hides it. And now we'll bring this, group that, so we'll bring that up in there. Let's make that top of the stacking order. There we go. So bring this down. That's obviously too small. Remember, we've got that little bit of bleed on our background, so that little red/maroon area should just be overlapping that area of our panel. And now I can go, I could have done this with the clipboard and doing Command X or cut. That would have been another way to go on this, but Command or Control, Option Alt 3. But to use this mask, it has to be in front. And instead of this mask on one in the transparency panel, you can also use the clipping mask that's up here. It's basically the same thing. So Object, clipping mask all the way down here, Make. And that will just do the same thing. I'll just cut off anything that is outside of the boundaries of that mask. So with that, how it is, let's try multiply on this. Maybe you want to keep it at normal, but I kind of like this because it's working with that light and shadow of the rest of the panel. So it's a little bit different color than this, but that's okay. I think it just fits a little bit more in that area. And then we'll have this. This would be an alternative third panel. Bring that to the front, group it, shrink it down so it more or less fits in here. And I don't really need to put anything. We can just kind of let this have a little bit of a border on it. And it'll fit right in here. But I'd want to also put a multiply effect on this. It changes the color a little bit, but makes it look like it fits in that environment pretty well now. I think, anyway. And if, something that I might have considered, doing something like this, maybe we could take, we played with that star earlier. Maybe this would be kind of a cool thing to do, like maybe to decorate that booth. Maybe it's a little boring to just have panels in there. We want to do something like this, change the shape a little. And let's see, I'm going to go Shift E for eraser tool. Here we'll Option, drag this down, it chops it off. Option, chops that off. And now we're getting some kind of an interesting shape going on here. Do layer stacking. So that's a little bit more fun, I think, anyway. That'll look kind of weird, I think. I'll just play around with those a little bit, not too much. Get it so I like it. At least I kind of like it. So I kind of like that whole idea of the star slightly changing its shape every time it's shown. So it's almost like the appearance that it's in motion, you know, it's always kind of dancing or glittering or whatever. Dancing, transforming, sparkling, glittering, whatever you want to say. It's changing all the time wherever it's shown. So that would be like a branding element that, you know, you say sometimes that branding elements are supposed to stay consistent. Well, this stays consistent in the fact that it changes every time it's shown. So it's kind of just a different kind of element that we're working with. I'm trying to get that shape that I like. I don't know, it's probably something like that. We'll call it good and move on from there. So see, I didn't even like this, you know, third panel optional. I changed my mind. I thought when I got all these in here, it looked kind of boring. Don't know what that is. Some old stuff up here. But here, all this junk off to the side that I've been playing around with, I don't need anymore. And the only thing here, I'm looking at that and it looks a little bit low, so maybe I want to bring that up just a bit, somewhere in there. Again, look at it from afar, look at it up close. I always ask, well, can anything here be improved? Good habit to get into generally when you're working. But now I have all of my content panels, so what's going to be presented. I've got my 2 panels. All you need is 2, but if you have a third like this, that's fine to include that. You know, I changed it here, but it doesn't necessarily have to reflect. Just show me at least 2 panels that are the same, and if you change your mind like I did, and I thought this was boring to just have this here, like that, you know, that just wasn't really my cup of tea. I wanted to do something a little different there. So I did, but you know, I could put this in here and take this and make a document for it, but it really isn't that necessary. I think this kind of tells the story. I'm just using a logo. I could use this, but I instead use that. the main thing I'm worried about or concerned about is your two main panels. So make sure to get those correct and you'll be good. And then that third panel can be kind of experimental. Maybe throw out an idea or two, whatever, something different. Use it as an excuse to experiment a little bit. But let's say this is good, this is how I want it. I'm gonna now save it and export it as I'm gonna submit it. So I have all of my content in here, so it's placed as an Illustrator file. You can use any program that you want. You can use Photoshop, you can use InDesign, but I think for a project like this, the best in most cases would be Illustrator to use trade show graphics like this. Again, when you have photographs, then Photoshop would probably be the better one to use. But it does kind of depend. The way that I've got this, I just have my, this photo here. I just have that in the background and I have it on an artboard. So when I export this PDF, all of my files are going to be within one file. I don't have to worry about submitting a JPEG separately. If you're using Photoshop, you probably would, like it indicates here. You can use Photoshop or it doesn't really matter. I just use Illustrator and place my panels on there. I guess whatever works. If it's not looking so good, try Photoshop out. But really, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to use Illustrator to make this work. It's got the same multiply effect, which kind of adds a coloring to it, picks up the shadows and makes it look like it's in that environment. It's simpler. It's all here in the same program. So in my case, it's really easy. If I've done it like this and kept it in one file, I just, I like to do save as. And then down here, choose Adobe PDF. Obviously, you want to do your typical file naming. That is not the correct file naming, but it's all right. Here, just go right through it. I wouldn't set up anything. Just keep it Illustrator default. Click Save PDF. And make sure that what you're seeing is something that you're happy with. So that looks good. I'm happy with that. Oops. That looks good. I'm happy with that one. I'm happy with that one. And that looks good too. I don't know why we got another panel on here. So that would be a mistake that could potentially cost some points actually. So I don't know why I'm getting another panel. Let's figure out that. Number of artboards. I can pull out my artboard panel. I can track it down this way. Watch as it just selects artboard 1, artboard 3, artboard 4. Looks like we've got two artboard 4s stacked on top of one another. All right, this mystery of the extra artboard. Let's try that again. I'll just click Command or Control S, and that should have solved it. No. That is strange. I don't know. I do not know why that is coming up as another artboard. Let's try that one. large. Very strange here. I don't know. Go unlock all. So there's no artboard now in that one. All right. Click this tool, and I should be able to click this thing once, and it automatically will create an artboard that's that exact size, which is kind of a neat feature of that tool. Yeah, but I want to make the point, Brianne, that this would be an easier way to do it. The way that it's asking for it in the assignment is that you just submit a separate JPEG and put this all together in Photoshop. But it's really not necessary to do that. You can if you want, but really Illustrator just worked great for that task. So in this case, you really wouldn't need to. And you could submit a separate JPEG or PNG file if you want. I'm not going to be picky about exact format. If it's so long as it's a JPEG or a PNG, that's fine. They didn't put PNG as an option here. If you want to submit this as a separate document, that's fine. But I just think it's easier to bundle it all together in here. Work within Illustrator and just place your file so that you can just move these right onto it. Probably experiment a little bit with transparency settings and do the multiply, but there's nothing in Photoshop that really you can't do in Illustrator for this. So I don't think those directions are really accurate here. I would say they're just one version of what you could do in this case. So with some of these tools, for example, I mean, if you wanted to, let's say, choose that other one. Let's say that you chose this one instead. So this with a diagonal. Well, you can do diagonals in Illustrator as well. Transform, distort tool. That's what you would use in Photoshop for this angle here. But angles are also easy in Illustrator. These are newer tools that were added in the suite that I have, CS 2015. So let's say, I don't know, I could just take this and I have a mask on it. So that one, maybe I'll use this one because this clipping mask actually will do a little bit better. Let's say that I have to make an angle, so it's at perspective. So these tools right here are some that you could use. Very similar to Photoshop on how it works. And I think it's just a matter of kind of playing around with these. But in my opinion, these are even easier to work with than Photoshop. So that would be, if we had to do this panel, make it conform to this kind of diagonal perspective thing. It's just these tools here. They're in the free transform tool. So it's in this little set here, especially these ones at the bottom, these two at the bottom. So anyways, yeah, I mean, if you had to do something like that, if you wanted to choose this other one, you could do that in Illustrator. You don't have to do that with Photoshop. Photoshop, you'd only want to use if you had photography. So I created most of my graphics. They're flat. They're very graphic in style. So to me, going into Photoshop is kind of pointless. But if you have photos and you're working with big photos, like even what we were seeing earlier, she had big photographs, so they probably would want to work in Photoshop. It's really your option. whatever you want to use, even InDesign. If you want to use InDesign, you could do it for this project, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. I think I'd say either if you have photos, use Photoshop, and if you have a lot of vector graphics, mostly vector graphics, use Illustrator. So here, let's see, I think I got the artboards right. I should only have 4 artboards, and I have 1, 2, so I've got kind of a mystery here of what artboard is what. I'm trying to figure this one out. But yeah, you don't want to submit blank pages because that's always, it's always kind of weird. It's like the client's going to ask, well, what's supposed to be on that page? Don't know. What is supposed to be on that page? So this is artboard 14. This is artboard 3. I'm going to drag these in order. So and artboard 8 can be deleted. So now I think this will work. Command S, save this thing. Let's see if this works. Now it works. Oops. It's a little fast. Let me go a little slower. Looks good, looks good, looks good. So that's what we'll go with here, I think. So that's what I'd turn in. And if you wanted to, like I say, turn in a separate JPEG file, that's okay. But I think it's easier if you just package it like this, all in one file. So that's what you turn in, a PDF, preferably in one file, but it's optional if you want to break it up and do more than one file, which is actually how the directions are kind of written here. But you can do it slightly different than the directions in this case, and just combine them all into one PDF. All right, so I think that would be a wrap on this. Any questions? All right, no questions, then we'll just wind things up. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing your final projects this weekend. Take it easy.